Well, we're to the divisional series round, and all of the AL Central teams are still in it, but not the Twins. And so we're doing Twins autopsies. This is part 2, and this is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren. You can unfollow me on the tweets at Brandon_WARNE. And I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Dave Brown, a ball writer since the late 90s, a Baseball Writers Association of America member since 2012, a Hall of Fame voter since 2024, and joining me, as he always does, what up?
I am a Baseball Reference member as well. I've had one of those subscriptions for quite a long time. I like to think from almost the beginning.
Every now and then when I see, are you a stat head? I think of, are you an S something head? So every time I just kind of glance at it, I'm like, well, yeah, I am. But why are you asking such a personal question? But
I want to get that T-shirt. I don't know if they sell that specifically, but I like that idea as a T-shirt. I'm going to go look at their swag page.
Well, otherwise, I know they're open to suggestions. Sean Foreman and his crew are tremendous. By the way, thank you, though, for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Hopefully, you're watching us on the YouTubes where you can see me wearing my absolutely tremendous 1991 Twins World Series championship hat that my brother gave to me. So pretty excited about that. Be free to be active in the comments. We love to hear from you on YouTube. Or 5-star reviews are huge for us. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you can leave a review. We would love to hear from you. And this episode brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. On this episode, this weekend episode, we're going to talk about, well, on our most recent episode, we talked about how bummed we were that the Twins are sitting at home watching 60% of the AL Central go to work here in the division series. And so we're going to talk about some more reasons why the Twins aren't doing that. And so we have, as you can see on the screen to your right, if you're watching on YouTube, some reasons that we're going to look at here. There you go, Dave. Dave's got the Vanna White there for you. But we'll break down each of those, and then we'll see if we're any closer to an answer than we were before. One thing to note, and we did mention this last time out as well, all of these things are going to be addressed by a different general manager. So Derek Falvey and his second in command, whoever that may be, will have to figure out what these are, because Thad Levine, and I saw a Betsy Helfand tweet here recently. He's intrigued by the idea of being a free agent for the first time in his career. I mean, I guess technically or whatever. So we'll see where he lands. We'll see where he winds up. I think the Twins go internal to replace him, but we have our full thoughts on Friday's episode if you want to go back and check that out. So for the first thing, we're kind of doing an in order, chronological as best we can. The problem is it's more like a spider web of things that went wrong, where they're all kind of connected little webs that have connective tissue to each other, where one thing led to another, but then you can backtrack a little ways. So in the first episode, we talked about not spending, and all of that kind of stems from there. In this episode, I want to start with not adding starting pitching, and I said ever. Now, you and I have been very vocal about the idea that signing Eric Fedde alone would have been incredibly pivotal into this team still possibly making the postseason, even with a September swoon such as it was, with a stabilizing factor like Fedde in the rotation when Joe Ryan went down. That probably would have went a long ways to helping, limiting the exposure of your rookies, who for the most part did pretty well this year. Would have helped as well. It was pretty simple from the get-go, and they didn't do it in the offseason. They didn't do it at the trade deadline, and as a result, it is now this offseason, and they are watching these teams in October instead of joining them.
Well, Fedde would have been a very Twins-like move, too, because we're not talking about a lot of money spent on the player at all.
Yep.
It would have been a little bit of a going out and risking a little bit because he'd been over in Korea, and we make it sound like he's a war veteran coming back, but he learned how to better spin and use his breaking pitches, and it's a really competitive league. I think people maybe get the wrong idea sometimes about what goes on over there, but there are things that you can do to not just earn a living playing baseball in Korea. You can work on some stuff, the way that the hitters are over there, and what they tend to look for, and what's in the league, the help that you can get from different sets of eyes. And Fetty certainly did that and turned into a terrific addition for the White Sox. First of all, hey, the White Sox did something right. Let's celebrate. Yeah. Woo. And then they turned him into kind of prospects. They didn't make a great trade, I don't think, but that would have been a move that would have made a lot of sense for the Twins to do, and is the kind of thing that they've done in years past. I guess you would say, did they just put too much faith in Paddock? Is it as simple as that? Because you can't necessarily rip him so much for once Joe Ryan got hurt, but certainly that, once that happened, they didn't have a lot of places to turn. Paddock never quite. He had a couple of decent starts, but I could see a certain non-tender situation coming up there. I don't know that I would bring him back.
Well, isn't he? I think he signed an extension. I think he's actually signed. Yeah, I think they signed him to a kind of like a pillow extension so that he could, like a bridge contract. So I think I
don't like those pillows, but
no, he's a throw pillow. He's a throw pillow.
He's a throw. Well, okay, so they can't non-tender him, but maybe they can figure something else out. That's going to end up being a sunk cost, but not doing something because you're relying on Paddock, who's still coming off major surgery, and I just it killed him. That alone, not doing something in spring before spring training, adding like. I'm pretty sure that Jordan Montgomery would have had a better season had he had all of spring training. If one of these teams, including the Diamondbacks, had signed Jordan Montgomery sooner, his season wouldn't have been the disaster that it turned into. Blake Snell, more of a talent, but it certainly took him quite a while to get going too.
The Twins fixed him. Remember, it was the end of the first half, and he diced against them, and then he was great after that.
Yeah, it seems like the Twins are doing that often, but but if these guys had come in for normal spring trainings, and that is an industry issue, not just a Twins issue.
It's Lance Lynn in 2018 too, though. Remember, he was miserable in Minnesota and had a terrible time, and then he goes back to being just great with Texas and the White Sox.
I'm not saying that I would have sunk $20 million, $25 million into one of these guys to come in at the end of spring training.
Right.
I think by the time at that point the train has sailed, and it's I wouldn't spend that money either. But maybe make a deal beforehand so they have an entire season to ramp up and not feel like they're rushed.
Michael Lorenzen was there. Like, Michael Lorenzen is 75% as good as those guys and like 25% of the money. Like, if a schmo like you or me could tell that Paddock was not going to work out as of March 1st, and you and I were, I think, pretty vociferous about the idea that they need insurance behind him. Like, even if you don't do that, they were rumored, and I think it was actually John Bonus erroneously reported that they were signing Jesse Chavez. Like, that alone would have been a big deal because he could have made, 4, 5, 6, 7 starts, go 4 or 5 innings, keep you in the game, and not over expose a guy like Zebby Matthews to where he's pitching to a 7 ERA, or down the stretch giving SWR some rest. David Festa, I think, was head and shoulders above the other two, head and shoulders above the rest for Twins rookies. And he probably didn't.
Did you just say that Festa was head and shoulders above the rest of?
Yeah, I did actually.
Oh my God.
But I think even a low wattage move like Jesse Chavez, who would have cost literally nothing, like they probably had more money into Randy Dobnak than they would have had to give Jesse Chavez. All of those things alone, like, it wasn't, we had some bad breaks with injuries. It was also stuff that was pretty easily forecastable that they just didn't deal with. Now, I don't think it was hubris, and I don't think it was a budget, but I think it was some combination of the two saying, all right, well, I guess what you see is what you get or something. And thanks, I hate it.
Even just as a 1-inning guy all season, Jesse Chavez would have helped the team a little bit. They gave plenty of innings, single innings to players and let some pitchers go a few more times than probably would have been advisable. And Chavez would have at least been a bridge to something else. Again, with people like Chavez and Fetty, we're not talking about a lot of money. And it's a baseball season when things are going to happen. You need more depth than you think you do. Even if you think you need depth, you probably need a little more than that. And it might have saved them. They might still be playing had they made one or two more moves proactively to give them more depth than they thought they needed to get through a season. They trusted a little bit too much. And this isn't just ownership, but maybe these are resources that Falvey and Levine could have put toward ensuring that the season would have gotten into October.
And let's be entirely fair. Chavez was let go by the White Sox, which I'm sure had a certain amount of stank to it just because everybody could kind of already tell the White Sox weren't going to be any good. And Chavez's numbers at a glance, 3.13 ERA, 7.8 strikeouts per 9, 2.7 walks per 9. There were certain aspects of it that led to a negative Fangraphs WAR. But in general, 63 1/3 of replacement level innings could have chewed up some valuable real estate in terms of maybe where Zebby Matthews got knocked around a bit or where SWR really was flagging at the end of the season. You could have taken a 10-day, 15-day vacation due to elbow tendonitis or something to that effect, and you would have had somebody equipped to come in and throw those innings. And so, yeah, Chavez gave up 1.42 homers per 9, and as a result, his FIP and everything were an extra run higher. But honestly, that to me, for $740,000 is what Fangraphs says he made. That was a no-brainer for the Twins. If you're not going to bring in Fetty, which alone was a no-brainer, and you're not going to bring in Lorenzen, which was the next step in that no-brain activity, then at the very least, you got to bring in Jesse Chavez. You just have to.
Well, Lorenzen helped the Royals get to the playoffs after a trade. So he was, he's run out of gas a couple times.
Sure.
I've noticed with his legs and so forth. So that wouldn't have been a perfect solution. The thing about, I am very looking forward to the careers of Zebby Matthews and even SWR and certainly Festa. I think they look good for the future, but they weren't really able this year as rookies to take that next step. And that's another thing that they were relying on too much. They're like, well, we have these talented rookies and they are talented, but their returns are probably going to be better in the future than they were ever going to be this year.
Yeah, so, unfair to ask three. It's hard to have an infrastructure where three rookies can chew up innings in your rotation and you contend. Like it's very difficult.
Right.
And so
for sure,
that's why we're sitting where we are right now. Let's take our first break. When we come back, talk about Twins all-star representative who took a steep decrease in value after the all-star break as part of the reasons why the Twins are sitting at home in October. Tonal. You got to know about Tonal. Even the most dedicated gym rats struggle, easy for me to say, with consistency. The commute, waiting for weights, other people's sweat, it makes skipping a workout very tempting. With Tonal, you can choose from thousands of workouts and train in a way you can actually enjoy at home. It's the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps get you stronger. It's powered by AI, and Tonal learns with every rep, so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. It learns from your movement and provides suggested weight recommendations for every move with detailed progress reports. They even create personalized programs and workout suggestions or recommendations based on your individual goals. It's like having a personal trainer at home with you, as Tonal will optimize every workout just for you. Unlike traditional gym equipment, Tonal uses adaptive digital weight to advance your training techniques. And from professional athletes to the mom of three, Tonal is trusted by thousands of different people who have become their strongest. I know one of the hosts got theirs in and has been raving about their Tonal. So you got to get it. You got to go out and try it right now. Tonal, Tonal, is offering our listeners $200 off your purchase with promo code LockedOnMLB. That's Tonal.com and use promo code LockedOnMLB for $200 off your purchase. That's Tonal.com, promo code LockedOnMLB. You'll get $200 off. All right, Dave. So Willi Castro, it was fun to see the Willi Castro, Rocco waking him up in the hotel in, I think it was San Francisco, right? But I'm not
right.
Saying, hey, kid, you're going to the All-Star game. And don't get me wrong, Willi Castro ended the season with 3.1 Fangraphs WAR. Last year, he was 2.5. Virtually identical seasons. 108 weighted runs created plus on both. A little better defense this year, a little worse base running. Obviously, not as many stolen bases, few more homers. Lots of things up, down, and otherwise for Willi Castro. But for being the everyman in the beginning of the season, he struggled down the stretch. And I don't know if it was that too much was asked of him or if he was just out of gas, what exactly it was. But July, 68 weighted runs created plus after a 153 in June, followed by a 99 in August and a 67 in September. That leaves you with a 124 in the first half and an 82 in the second half, a 40-plus point drop-off. It was clear by the end of the season that the Willi Castro show was it was ready for a sabbatical, I think is probably fair to say.
I think out of gas is a good way to put it. And what was one of the things that was so stressful about his season for him was that he was playing when Correa and then Buxton were out. He was playing high stress positions at center field and shortstop. And when the season started, Rocco probably envisioned him as kind of a jack of all trades, play him all over the outfield, all over the infield, at least third base or shortstop at times, sometimes at second base. And that's one thing, but to be kind of an everyday guy at those places obviously wore on him. And whether it was a physical thing or a mental thing or a combination therein, he was not anywhere near as effective. And that was the case on offense and defense. I thought in the second half, it was painfully obvious. And it wasn't just when Willi Castro was playing shortstop instead of Carlos Correa, but like when anybody does it, they're going to pale in comparison. The Twins really dropped off there, and they needed him to play a lot of shortstop at times when Correa was out, and the infield suffered for it. And that all isn't that surprising, but it's just he would have had a much better season had the Twins been in more of a position to not have to give him 150 starts, most of them coming right away. So, he's got an arbitration deal coming up. So it's possible that it might happen again where he's I think that actually Willi Castro probably would have been a decent player to put under contract long-term. And maybe that, I don't know if they're still interested in that or not, but he's got another arbitration decision coming up this year. And it will be, that's really the big one as far as the Twins go, as far as what's it going to be for the future.
Well, it's in the neighborhood of $6 million, which is Kyle Farmer money, both for better or worse. It's tough because guys who play that many positions often aren't shortstop caliber regular players, because otherwise they'd just be shortstops, right? Like he could play shortstop, but if he was an everyday shortstop, the Tigers probably wouldn't have non-tendered him. He would have played shortstop, undisputedly over someone like Brooks Lee or Kyle Farmer on given days. Like I think the mental taxation of it is that there's just so few players equipped to be Ben Zobrist. And Ben Zobrist, you did not want playing shortstop every single day. I think the same is true of Willi Castro. And I also think, too, that when we look at his body of work, he hasn't reached a level where he couldn't just return to a very ordinary average major league player, not 8 or 10% above league average offensively, playing a bunch of different positions. I mean, the Tigers soured on him enough to not pay him, I think, ARB1. And so, I think they tender him, and I think that that's probably it, because as much as you like having those guys as your 24th, 5th, 6th man, the Twins are flush with infielders even still in their system. I mean, at some point, somebody like Edouard Julien or Brooks Lee or Royce Lewis is going to probably have to settle down at one defensive position. You've already got shortstop more or less hammered out. You're going to have guys that have to move around. And I think in that case, the dollars would be better spent on someone with a little more nailed down position or more pitching or that sort of thing. So I think they're going to go year to year with Willie. I think based on that number, he's probably free agent eligible at the end of next year. And so to that end, I don't know that they'll look to go multiple years with him. I'm not opposed to it, but I also think too, like they may just have him in that Kyle Farmer role this season and then, kind of go from there. But yeah, the slump down the stretch, like there wasn't me saying, oh man, I know for sure if he keeps playing, he's going to get back to who he was in the first half. I did not see it. I think he still takes some of the ugliest plate appearances on the team. Every now and then, like a 2-0, he'll just be guessing up there and swinging out of his shoes on a breaking ball in the dirt. And I'm just like, again, the Eduardo Nunez comp comes back to me again and again and again. Good players, fun players, quality players, but sometimes you just watch them and you're like, what was the thought process behind that swing? And, guy gets down 0-2 and you have no confidence he can compete and battle in that plate appearance. Now, usually they do, but again, I don't know. Those are my gripes with Willi Castro.
There was an inconsistency there. He was still above league average significantly. I think he was an 8% walk rate. And actually, that's a little below league average, but it was up it was above his career average. So he's still, the last 2 years, he's been over 8%, which is better for him. He was not that kind of player with the Tigers. So, and his strikeout rate is a little higher than major league average, 23.6 this year, and major league average is 22.8. So his isolated power, a little below league average. He still was maybe 2% overall better hitter, even with the slumps in the second half, than he was overall. So he still got value. And I think, I don't know, are you're counting on Buxton playing more and Correa playing more, but no matter how the roster is constructed, if Willi Castro's on it next year, I don't think they can go into the season thinking he could be an everyday player for us for 2 months at a time. If somebody major is hurt, I think that's where they have to make sure that, and maybe Brooks Lee's presence makes that something that they won't have to consider.
Same with Emmanuel Rodriguez too in center field. So if he can stay healthy, we'll see what happens there. Hey, let's take our last break. When we come back, we have a big regression piece to look at for behind the plate, which cost the Twins badly this season. So we'll look at that and then we'll get out of here. But not before we give some love to our friends at Booking.com. It's the booking app. This episode of Locked On Twins is brought to you by Booking.com. You can explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about, those baseball cities or other cities anywhere in the U.S. with beds and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. On Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, maybe even in your baseball rival city during the postseason. If you're a Twins fan, you're in luck. Every Twins divisional rival is in the postseason except Chicago. And who needs a reason to go to Chicago? You can go to Chicago for the sake of going to Chicago. Ride the train. Check out that bean-looking thing. I don't know what it is. I just see it in pictures all the time. And go eat some pizza. That is very polarizing. There's reasons to go to every AL Central city outside of Minnesota, even if you're not going to watch the playoffs. And Booking.com wants to help you with Booking.com's wide variety of choices across the U.S. You can go see all these cities incognito. You can just do your own thing, and Booking.com would like to help you. Booking.com delivers exactly the right U.S. stay for you and can help you book a stay that's close to wherever you're trying to go, whether it's your home team stadium, your rival team stadium, or if you're just trying to get away from baseball altogether, Booking.com is there for you. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. That's Booking.com, Booking.yeah, or the Booking.com app. Now, Dave, a big thing that happened down the stretch was Ryan Jeffers being, I don't want to say unplayable behind the plate. And for his whole season, he was 1.7 Fangraphs WAR in 122 games. By comparison, Christian Vasquez 0.8 for a full season. 2.5 WAR from your catcher is not great, not horrible, but not what you want either. And I think the most telling thing was, by the way, 2.9 from catchers. Twins altogether was 15th, so right in the middle of the pack, but tied with the Phillies, who had JT Realmuto. So, but again, I just down the stretch with how Jeffers was playing, the fact that it wasn't blatantly obvious that Jeffers should start more often than Vasquez because of his bat was problematic. And I think there were plays catching wise that Jeffers did not make that you would have expected just 20th percentile Jeffers to make. There was that play he dropped in one of the late games at home on a game that got away from maybe the Marlins series, I want to say.
Right.
And there were just different pitches. He was a pretty good framer for quite a while there. And then I feel like it just wasn't there for him this year in the same way. Defensive metrics vastly preferred Vasquez. 14.1 runs defensively for Vasquez on FanGraphs. Jeffers minus 2.4. I don't have framing or any of the baseball perspective super geeky stuff in front of me, but I feel confident in saying that the data definitely preferred Jeffers as a hitter, but Vasquez as a defender. And we've seen, the Astros got bounced and everybody was ticked about Yainer Diaz letting that curveball get past him, where he didn't get down and block it. Teams like that keep guys like Martin Maldonado and Christian Vasquez employed for a reason. Now, Jeffers is not quite as good defensively, but we've seen a much better defensive version of Jeffers than we saw this year. And offensively, I mean, the numbers overall, a 317 WOBA, a 107 weighted runs created plus, that's fine in a vacuum. But when you start where you did, that fall is especially problematic.
Just a real disappointing season and a killer in a couple of different ways for the Twins. It's a good thing that Christian Vasquez did pick up his bat in July and August the way he did, because I think maybe the Twins would have been even further out of the playoffs had nobody been able to come through at that point. Jeffers just, you mentioned some super geeky stats, and he was he's ranked 55th in what do I got here? Catcher framing leaderboard on StatCast. So I mean that's down. Will Smith is 58th. So there's some, and Yainer Diaz is 56th. So there's some guys who have some pretty significant playing time.
Those guys are have bat will travel catchers, not defensive catchers, and he's right in that mix. And he's not as good a hitter as they are.
Well, he wasn't this year, at least consistently speaking. He started out so good. Yeah. He started out so good. His April and May were terrific. He was well above major. I mean, he was almost an elite hitter among any position in the first 2 months of the season. He had 12 home runs for the first 2 months. He was 70% above league average as relates to adjusted OPS in April, and 34% above league average as a hitter in May. And then June swoon, about 75% below average in June, 25% below average in July. August, he picked it back up. Remember, he got hot again and hit 5 home runs and slugged almost 600 and was 50% above 50 above average in August as a hitter. In September, again, not 75%, but maybe 65% below average in September, that was basically his worst month. He had a few more at bats then than he did in June. June was
those plate appearances felt hopeless though in September. Hopeless.
They did, and that's we're talking about the things that finally killed the Twins season, and that's one of the things that did. Jeffers not being able to at least be, let's just say, average as a hitter in September. A couple of guys have average seasons. That makes just a huge difference to me. That's like a couple situations where they have the bases loaded, nobody out, and don't score. Jeffers comes through with a sac fly or something. Somebody else comes through. They win a game. They're in it a little longer. They missed the playoffs by 4 games, but at the same time, it's a situation where just a little bit of an improvement and something that wasn't so awful maybe means the difference between going home and staying. So and staying out. And overall, his defense just if you look at outs above average, fielding run leaderboard on Statcast, 40 catchers who caught at least 500 innings. Jeffers is 36th. So James McCann, somewhat surprisingly, also -7 runs. Shea Langoliers -9, Connor Wong -13, and Luis Camposano -13. The only worse defensive catchers than Jeffers. He's got to pick it up next year. He's got to rebound and at least try and be average for a whole season rather than what he was.
McCann's a free agent. You got some offensive first guys, and Camposano's a young guy. So there's different reasons why guys can have slumpy seasons. And even maybe this is a one-off year that Jeffers has where he finds it again in the offseason. But again, it doesn't make me any more likely to say, hey, flip Christian Vasquez if you can, because the catching free agent market's so thin, save some money and put that elsewhere. I'm going back into this season next year with the same catching hierarchy and just doing the same thing and hoping that if Jeffers gets hot, he stays hot. So
he's still only 27. And getting hot is one thing. We don't expect the guy to be 50% above league average for an entire season, but it's the lows. They're just too low. You can't get that low. You can't be in the lineup when you're that hopeless at the plate. It can't get that bad. You got to stop your free fall at some point.
Yep, and Vasquez had that in the first half, so it was tough. That's all we got for this edition of Twins off-season/postseason autopsy. We'll be back for part 3 at some point here soon. Make sure you check out Sully Unlocked on MLB in the preparing for the Fall Classic, wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. But hey, he's Dave Brown. I'm Brandon Warren saying thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see ya
tomorrow.
Right.